The Manchester City 0-0 against Inter Milan at home. Haaland pictured there in The Guardian. We can see it one more time. Charlotte, I guess it typifies the mood around this game, doesn't it? He looks bored and frustrated, made to wait for his 100th City goal, they say. Repeat of the final from 15 months ago. Was this a little bit underwhelming?
I think the problem we've got with Manchester City is that we all expect them to go into these games and just swipe people away. And I think credit to Inter, because they came into this game with a very defined game plan. They wanted to sit tight with their back five. They frustrated Manchester City. They couldn't find a way to break them down. And they had two very physical men up front who they tried to hit them with on the counter-attack. And to be fair, they very nearly did. I think they can probably come away and be frustrated possibly that they didn't get anything out of this game. I think City looked a bit off colour, a bit like the kit that they had on, but maybe the less said about that, the better. And I think this is the first time that they failed to score a goal in the group stage game at home. So it is being billed as a big shock, but it's Manchester City in the Champions League. There's 7 more group stage games in this new format. I'll be very surprised if we're sat here in January talking about this game being a crisis.
Indeed. Well, you mentioned the volume of games, John. Back page of The Sun as well. Haaland's not on it is their headline. Is that the problem, though? We've got the English champions against the Italian champions, but it doesn't really matter that much, does it, the result?
Not really, Ted. It's a good point. I mean, it's the launch of the new Champions League format. It's the brave new world, isn't it? And it's supposed to be all singing, all dancing this week. And yet, what do? We probably turn over and watch the Carabao Cup if we can. To be honest, I mean, honestly, that's the problem, isn't it? Because there's a lot of games there to kind of reach where you need to finish in the top seeds in the league format. You've got those 2 extra games, which has then caused this massive row a week about the extra demands and sort of pressures on players. And then we set it up with Man City, year on, year out. They're basically billed as Champions League favourites because they're this fantastic football team that do play spectacular football, and basically Erling Haaland scores an absolute ton of goals each week. And then what do? We kick off with a 0-0 draw. And so it's almost a bit of a tough sell, really. I do think for UEFA in the Champions League a little bit. I think it's going to take a bit of time to get used to. One of the things that I think is that basically, what do we love about football? I think we love its simplicity. And I think it's going to take us a while to kind of get our heads around and just know automatically what happens in this Champions League. Who goes through, what's a good result, what's a bad result. And at the moment, it just feels like we're lacking that excitement, jeopardy, call it what you like. But we've ended up with a 0-0 in really what was supposed to be the kind of the big advert for the new competition on the Wednesday night.
Indeed, interesting. A lot of the back page is dominated by the Carabao Cup, as John says. But let's go inside the Telegraph and look more at the City story. And it centres on injuries, interestingly. Inter keep Haaland waiting as City sweat on De Bruyne injury. Jason Burt, chief football correspondent at the Etihad. And I suppose to John Point, Charlotte, will City be more concerned about De Bruyne's possible absence from the Premier League than the Champions League? Will they see progression here more comfortable than perhaps what they've got domestically on their cards?
Yeah, because obviously they've got that massive game this weekend at home against Arsenal. I'm sure we'll touch on their own injury problems that they've got. But De Bruyne there pictured, I think he came off at half-time. He seemed to have tweaked something. So we know the sort of machine they can be in the Premier League, but going up against the team who were tipped to take them all the way this season in the league, you'd think having one of their best players in Kevin De Bruyne fit is going to be a big concern for Guardiola. Obviously, we've not heard anything from his press conference yet to suggest how serious or not that injury is. But in terms of the Champions League, I think UEFA wanted it to be more exciting in terms of there would be no dead rubbers going forward. I was at the Villa game last night, and when they scored their 3rd goal, they were chanting top of the league, because obviously now they're not, because we know how many Bayern scored and Celtic scored 5 today. So I think it could be more interesting the further along the competition we get. But at the minute, as you say, they've got 7 more games. So not winning tonight isn't a total disaster for them. But losing Kevin De Bruyne this weekend could be a bigger blow for them.
Interesting, Charlotte, you thought the kit was a disaster for Manchester City. I've just twigged it was the definitely maybe tribute, wasn't it? City see victory slide away as the Mirror headline. Pep's team are far from supersonic in Oasis kit. That was a good song, maybe not a great night of football. John, what about De Bruyne? Will they miss him? How significant? Because it was OK in the end last season when he missed a big chunk, wasn't it?
Yeah, blimey! I'll tell you what. The guy that's written that headline took the mickey out of me for weeks afterwards for getting online and getting some Oasis tickets. So I'm actually going to have him after this show. But honestly, yeah, I do think it's a massive blow for City potentially for De Bruyne because, you know, I mean, listen, we say that, and he's obviously missed chunks of recent seasons, and City always find a way. As I say, the sort of the signing in the summer of Gundogan, bringing him back on a free was just an absolute masterstroke. But you can't deny the quality of De Bruyne, and it is in these games that sometimes you just sort of kind of suffer these kind of freak setbacks. I mean, it's just amazing, isn't it, for City that they basically scored 11 goals in their opening 4 Premier League games, 9 of which have come from Erling Haaland, who scored more than any other individual team in the Premier League. I mean, it just blows your mind. And yet they draw a blank tonight. And, you know, a lot of people sort of kind of really sort of saying in the match reports, you know, Jack Grealish was the sort of the standout star and Inter could have nicked it. So, you know, it's just so difficult, I think, sometimes to kind of keep that momentum. And I wonder also whether City tonight also had half an eye on that game. Because if you know that it's not kind of win or bust in the Champions League, are you going to be at sort of kind of 100% intensity if you know that you've got such a big game at the weekend? All these kind of factors come into it, really. But I must say, I did expect City to win, and I think if City had won, then kind of that gives you a boost. But I do think they probably finish it cursing more, as Charlotte rightly says, more about De Bruyne's potential absence than anything else.